Hi, I'm Alex from the Zscaler Customer Success Engineering team. In this series of short videos, we're taking a look at the baseline recommendations for configuring a data protection policy inside Zscaler Internet Access. This is part 2 covering cloud application control. As mentioned in the previous video, building a comprehensive data protection policy and program starts with discovering and securing cloud applications that are in use within your tenant. You do this by discovering what destinations users are accessing, prioritizing destinations that pose a higher data loss risk, choosing which applications are sanctioned, approved, and trusted by IT to be used by your users, creating risk profiles, which use relevant security criteria to apply policy to multiple cloud applications at once, and finally, defining a scalable cloud application policy that leverages risk profiles to protect cloud applications. Let's start by looking at the first step, which is discovering your cloud applications. To do this, Zscaler has built the SaaS security report. This report is accessible inside the Zscaler Internet Access Administrator UI. Here you'll find a number of filters that you can use in order to drill down into the applications that have been discovered inside your tenant. We recommend starting by looking at unsanctioned applications with a risk score of 4 or higher, in order to prioritize which applications are most risky. With these filters applied, you'll see a top application category breakdown, which shows you which applications are generating traffic, when whether they're sanctioned or unsanctioned. The main data loss risk categories to look for at this stage are file sharing, AI/ML, and social networking. Before we continue, here's a brief aside so you can understand how application risk index scoring works. Zscaler assigns a risk score to cloud applications based on a number of attributes. For example, do they support MFA? Have there been data breaches for this application in the last 3 years? Are there password strength requirements? Is data encrypted in transit? Does the application have poor terms of service? Are there source IP restrictions that are configurable or in place for the application? And so forth and so on. These attributes are taken together, with more critical attributes receiving a higher weightage in calculating the score. Because of this, in most cases, legitimate business applications that are run by trusted software vendors will receive lower risk scores, for example, OneDrive or SharePoint, whereas public access applications that can be used by anyone, or applications in particularly high-risk categories, will receive a higher risk index. By leveraging this risk score, we can build policy that applies to multiple cloud applications at once in entire cloud application categories. We'll look at this in a little bit more detail in a second. Next, now that we've done our discovery and identified what cloud applications that are high risk are within our tenant, let's talk about configuring cloud applications. Cloud applications can be assigned one of two statuses, either sanctioned or unsanctioned. A sanctioned application is one that's been identified by the business and that has been deemed trustworthy and aligned with corporate IT policy. An unsanctioned application is any application where that's not the case. By default, all applications that are inside your Zscaler tenant are listed as unsanctioned until you edit specific cloud applications to define them as sanctioned according to your IT policy. It's also worth noting here that if you disagree with the default risk index computed for any cloud application, this is editable, so you can override the default risk index with a custom risk index based on your own calculations. Note that any changes that you make to these cloud applications has no effect until a policy is built using these. The next step is to define cloud application risk profiles. There are two types of cloud application policies. One is a static policy, where you build a policy for each cloud application, defining which applications are allowed, which applications are blocked, and specific behaviors for specific applications that are allowed or blocked. If no policy is configured for an application or application behavior, then by default, that application or behavior are implicitly allowed. The other type of cloud application policy you can build is a risk-based policy. This leverages the risk index scores that we've just talked about and the risk profiles that you can configure in order to build a policy that makes decisions based on an application's risk score and sanctioned or unsanctioned status. With this, you can create policy that will take all applications that are unsanctioned and above a certain risk, for example, and restrict what users can do with those applications by saying, for example, that users are unable to upload data to all applications inside the file sharing category that have a high risk and are not sanctioned. This ability to define risk profiles and build a cloud application risk-based policy goes hand in hand with a number of additional granular controls. These include tenancy restrictions, which allow you to configure and enforce tenant-specific policy for 12 supported cloud applications. Cloud application instance control, which allows you to enforce instance-specific policy for some cloud applications. For example, you can configure Office 365 instances to allow only corporate Office 365 instances and not personal Office 365 domains. Or you could configure Box to allow access only to specific Box instances, i.e. your corporate Box instance, rather than allowing access to all Box instances. Finally, there's also granular controls for specific actions for applications in 5 categories: file sharing, instant messaging, social networking, streaming media, and webmail. These allow you to, for example, allow users viewing of specific destinations like LinkedIn while blocking the ability for users to post to those destinations. It's important to note that, as discussed in the previous video, SSL inspection is required for any of these controls to be applied to any traffic. Note that to help with configuring Cloud Application Instance Control, we've also got an instance discovery report that's available inside the ZIA admin UI. This will allow you to identify which instances users are connected to for supported SaaS applications. To conclude this video, here's a reminder of the next steps you should take on your data protection journey. First, use the SaaS security report in order to identify risky cloud applications by filtering applications that are unsanctioned and with a high risk index. This will allow you to know which applications you should prioritize building policy for. Secondly, create risk profiles. We recommend creating the risk profiles that are displayed on screen. One profile that targets high-risk unsanctioned applications, and one profile that targets high-risk sanctioned applications. This will allow you to define a policy with different effects based on whether the application is sanctioned or unsanctioned, without unduly restricting access to applications that have a low risk index. Finally, leveraging Cloud App Instance Control is important and recommended in order to make sure that you're restricting access to non-corporate instances for applications that support this feature. Thank you for watching. This concludes this video.